What's going on, everybody? LK here. The big question is, did Guilty Gear rip off Street Fighter 6 with its new mechanics? So let me explain. This question might seem kind of random, but when they showed off the new mechanics in like August, a lot of people were calling like Wild Assault's drive impact, and they were like, the burst gauge is a resource now, isn't that like the drive meter? So I wanted to look at the two games and kind of compare the mechanics and also talk about more what they're trying to do with Wild Assault. So the reason I think people were saying this were mainly two things. One is just the animation of Wild Assault. It's kind of like this half screen lunging attack that pretty much every character has. But then also the other thing, of course, that I mentioned was the reworking of the burst gauge. This one I think is the bigger one for sure. Now the unique thing about Street Fighter 6 in particular is the drive meter. So the entire game is kind of built around this mechanic where other mechanics are built into it. So every character has their drive gauge that gives you access to drive impact, parry, drive rush, guard cancels, and EX moves, and you have these as soon as the round starts. So you have a lot of tools to work with in a round in Street Fighter as soon as the round starts. So similarly in Strive, when you start the round, you have all the mechanics that are attached to bursts, because both of the new system mechanics in this game are attached to your burst meter. So Wild Assault costs 50% burst, and this push block deflect shield also costs 50% burst. And the logic here is that you have access to these tools right away, so you're able to create both strong offensive situations and also maybe wiggle out of scary defensive situations immediately at the beginning of the round, which means it's basically distributed across the entire cast evenly. But in my opinion though, that's where the similarities end. So again, as a quick review, in Street Fighter 6 the drive meter is used for a lot of stuff. So it's used for EX moves, so rather than a normal version of a move, you can power it up, and that costs your drive gauge. There's drive impact, which only costs 1, and this absorbs attacks. You could use it in the corner to get a guaranteed combo if they don't avoid it somehow. This is kind of like a reaction check that the opponent has to be looking out for, and different characters deal with it in different ways. You can also use it as a guard cancel, so at the cost of drive meter, you can just get people off you if you're in a sticky situation. You have the drive rush, so either canceling off normals or doing it in neutral. You can lunge at people. It changes the frame data on your attacks as well. It makes combos that are normally impossible possible. It makes offensive sequences that are normally impossible possible. And you have parry as well. So this is pretty low risk and kind of a catch-all, and of course there's perfect parry behind this as well. And parry is just another mechanic you could use to mitigate rough situations on defense. The thing is though, this drive meter doesn't just tell you what you can do, it kind of tells you the situation that could come as well, because it clearly says how much of it you have available, how much each player has. So whether or not you have to expect this, whether or not this is a factor, is guard cancel a factor, etc. And running out is also really bad news, and now you can be unblockable in the corner, and normals are more advantageous than they would be. It's like every button is drive rush, so it's pretty bad to run out, and this gauge has to fill up totally before you return back to normal. Systems like these are really good because it's a pretty clear way to tell the viewer what is going on. So once you learn how the drive meter works, when you're watching, even if you're watching a character that you're not familiar with, you can see like, oh, they only have half, or oh, they ran out of drive meter, they need to be careful now. And these mechanics are carefully tied to each other because the whole game revolves around this mechanic, right? Now, in Strive, on the other hand, the burst meter is only used for like 3 things really. So Wild Assault, push block, and bursting. I mean, you can get nitpicky and say like 4 things because there's offensive burst and defensive burst, but whatever, bursting in general. It has no effect on your meter really at all outside of gold burst, but again, it's fine. Now, Wild Assault also has types, kind of similar to drive impact. So drive impact, it's how far you go and like how fast it is, but Wild Assault has orange, blue, and white. So the orange one is kind of just like a fast poke. It's very, very fast, takes away burst on hit and block, mainly used for combos, where the blue one is also used for combos, but it is not as fast as the orange one, so you can't use it off like anything. The combos you use blue Wild Assault is way more for specific situations, where the orange one is kind of like a catch-all. Unlike the orange one, the blue one causes a more advantageous situation, a guard crush situation. So a lot of characters that have like good mix-ups or good setups have the blue wild assault. And the big bodies have this white one, which has some invincibility on it, as well as creating an advantageous situation, and you can use this both offensively, defensively, and in neutral because of it being invincible. And the push block is not a guard cancel, it's not like a free out, so people are still trying to figure out more ways how to use this mechanic. Out of the two, Wild Assault is definitely seeing way more use, way more discussion about like how good it is, how much changes the game, things like that. Street Fighter 6, because there's so many mechanics tied together in the drive meter, is more of like a resource-based game of like every character has this same resource to use it for different things, and how much of this thing remaining affects a lot of choices that happens in the game. As I mentioned before, it gives you a lot of information of who has an advantage right now, who needs to maybe take a risk right now, who's able to explode out with damage right now. Where I'll say the burst rework doesn't directly change how matches go that much immediately, so like any change to the drive system will affect Street Fighter 6 a lot. But at surface level, you can basically play Guilty Gear Strive Season 3 the same way you played Guilty Gear Strive Season 2, and you wouldn't really feel a difference. Maybe you'd have combos you don't normally get every now and then. But I will say long term, it will have that similarity in that it's not specifically that how much burst you have affects the rest of the game, it's how you're using the burst affects the rest of the game. And again, it really comes down to how Wild Assault works. So it's like three things that are working in tandem, kind of like beneath the shadows or behind the scenes. Because again, you could just play this game like last season and it would be fine. One is that Wild Assault removes burst on block or hit. So this is on block, moves just a little bit. The charge one similarly, but if I hit them, it's the same effect. Why does this matter? This means that when you use the new mechanic, outside of push blocking, which you do, which just costs 50% of your bar, you are not able to use gold burst or defensive burst to get out of a situation. So you could have something like a theoretical situation like this. What's funny is I'm saying theory situation, but this happens in my games, so So this is a round start situation where I start with a poke, a commonly used poke, by the way, depending on the matchup. I combo into my blue Wild Assault, that takes away your burst. Then I go to the wall and I break the wall either right when you get burst back or before you get your burst back. It kind of depends. And then I break the wall again with Wild Assault. At a glance, you might be like, oh, you spent all this resource on Wild Assault. You used both of them, you emptied your burst. But you take away their burst from this sequence. And two, look at how quickly my burst comes back in positive. So I have significantly less burst than Nagoriyuki, right? I'll even like walk up, stroll up. So I'm at 50%, Nago's like at 85. I think Nagoriyuki will get his burst back before I get mine though. And he has it, okay. So I was able to get around 70% of my burst back starting from 0. Before Nago got his burst back starting from around like 65%. So even though I spent all my burst, I got a pretty good return on investment, right? I have another Wild Assault available already, and I'm going into getting my entire burst back now. So another thing to keep in mind here is that Wild Assault also gives you the equivalent of a super wall break, but again, it also takes away your burst. So you get that same situation of using a super, but using your burst instead. Depending on the character, you get to think about whether or not you regain your resource. So I did it with Nagoriyuki, right? Normally, he wants to break the wall with his sword super so that he gets blood meter back. But there's some characters who don't have a resource to manage at all. Like Baiken does not have one. She just has her normal meter. We can think of the burst as one as well. And you can think of now, do I want to break the wall specifically with super or with Wild Assault? And again, using Wild Assault is pretty advantageous because you're getting that burst back. And then, as I mentioned, you get positive, so there's a lot of benefits to this. One, your burst comes back really, really quickly. Two, of course, you're getting meter passively. You get the offense buff, the defense buff. So you're in a really, really strong situation when you get this. So really what I meant by long-term burst is going to dictate the way the matches go is that I feel like, and you kind of see it already from the characters that are already used to building their game plans around those. So if you've seen like Happy Chaos, the new Happy Chaos, what they do is they break the wall of Wild Assault and they set up their old kind of checkmate situation of trying to chip you out from really far and building a lot of resource and getting their burst back all at the same time because of the way the burst works now. At the moment, not a big thing. Like, not everybody is taking this into account, but I think long term you'll see more and more people account for this in their game plans, where from the beginning of a round in Street Fighter, a lot of your choices are around the drive meter. So, revisiting the question, is the new rework to burst copying Street Fighter? I don't know if the timing was just unfortunate, you know, because they've said they've been working on Season 3 for a really long time. Maybe they got unlucky with the timing, maybe they had similar ideas, I don't know. I'll give them a no, but I can see why at a surface level people would be like, ah, that reminds me of this thing, just because it looks the same. But the games are definitely developing in like a different way. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. How are you liking the new mechanics in Guilty Gear Strive? Were you one of those people who are calling Wild Assault Strive Impact? Let me know in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.